Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's top 15 worst episodes of Lost. So this video is a part of a series of videos where I cover every episode of Lost. I just did a series of videos, several videos where I covered every single episode of Lost. I did seasons 1, 2, and 3 in 3 parts, seasons 4 and 5 in 2 parts, and then season 6 in 3 parts. And I also did a series of videos of how I would write Lost. I did 7 videos about that. So basically I just had a huge coverage of Lost in these 2 videos where I count down my top 15 least favorite videos of Lost, and I count down my top 30 favorite videos of Lost, or episodes of Lost, sorry. These are meant to be the conclusion, the celebration, the end to my coverage of Lost. So it's not necessarily meant to be a standalone, succinct 6 or 7 minute video that quickly runs down all the bad episodes of Lost. If that's what you're looking for, then you'll be disappointed. This video isn't it. It's a conclusion celebration of my coverage, so I'm going to talk as long as I damn well feel like, and if this video is an hour to 2 hours, whatever, I don't care. So if you're going to complain about that and you want something more succinct, go elsewhere. Anyway, I love Lost, as you know, if you've been watching my coverage of Lost. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. It has flaws. A lot of that had to do with the time period in which it was released. It was very much a trailblazer and a format that's now become very commonplace and normalized in modern times. But back in, over a decade ago when this show first aired, it wasn't so normalized. It was a new thing. And because of that, there was a lot of issues, a lot of pushback between the network studio, like they were still doing it on broadcast TV on ABC, which, as we learned in later years, is not necessarily the best place for this type of format. Usually now streaming services or premium cable channels and stuff like that. So I still love the show, and I don't want anyone saying, "Oh, how dare you say the worst episodes of Lost? The show's amazing." I agree. I love the show. It is amazing. But every good show, especially my favorite shows of all time, they all have bad episodes. They all have things that episodes that for one reason or another just fell apart and didn't work, and it happens more. And I gotta say, in older shows that have more episodes per season, and Lost did start with 24 episodes, or around 22, 24 for each season. And when you have that many episodes in one season, it's inevitable that you're gonna have some stinkers, because it's just not possible to cram out week by week so many episodes and maintain consistent quality. This is true of any show. I don't know any show there's ever an exception for. The more modern shows that have less episodes per season, they can get away with not having as many stinkers, but even they still have stinkers from time to time. It just happens. So this video is for that. And again, if that's not your thing, you're going to be like, "Oh, there's no such thing as a bad episode of Lost," and I don't need your fanboyism here. Anyway, I love the show. One of my favorite shows of all time, but I'm here to talk about the downside, the worst. Anyways, so as I was watching, I went through and I watched every single episode of Lost. As I said, I rated each episode from 1 to 10, and so these are the lowest of the crop. So I will have a rating of my rating from 1 to 10 flash up on screen, so the episodes I'm about to talk about fit into that rating. And of course, when I move on to another rating, I'll have that rating flash up on screen. So let me get started with my top 15 worst episodes of Lost. Alright, so let's start with my number 15, which is Adrift. It is episode 2 of season 2, I believe. Another way to refer to this episode is "What?" Because that's basically all this episode is Michael screaming, "What?" Don't get me wrong, I get that the character of Michael would be traumatized and he would be fixated on the fact that he lost his son. But it's a matter of what makes for good storytelling. Like, what do we need to see on the TV screen? And usually when you have stuff like that that's just going to be repetitive and just repeating the same beats, you sort of time jump. You skip over that and you imply that a lot of times passed in which he was grieving for the loss of his son, which, again, it makes total sense for him to grieve for his son for a long time, especially since this takes place immediately after his son first gets kidnapped. But again, they should have just skipped over this and implied it. We don't need to see him for half an hour screaming, "Walt!" and being a total dickhead to Sawyer and trying to blame him for Walt's abduction when Sawyer actually got shot trying to defend Walt. And so the interaction between the two of them was just annoying. And then we had this shark, which was the fakest of fake stakes. It's obvious, we need some tension in this episode. We need something to be suspense because we can't just have Michael and Sawyer bitching at each other for the whole hour. So let's have this shark come by and try to kill them. Ooh. It was really fake stakes. And the flashbacks were not much better. It was sort of retreading what Michael and Walt's flashback in season 1 already did better. That was a very succinct series of flashbacks that really told us the whole story, everything we needed to know about Michael and Walt. This one about him getting a lawyer and not having enough money, it was just beating a dead horse on things that we already knew, and how much he loved his son. We already knew that. Didn't really contribute anything, wasn't really necessary. And I guess the best part of the episode was probably the stuff with Kate and Locke going into the hatch, because they implied this in episode 1 of season 2, but didn't show it, so we went back in time to see what they were like. But really, they could have just included this in the first episode and cut out some of the slack in that episode. So it's a real sign of how much they had to drag out these first couple of seasons, the first 3 seasons, because of the format of like too many episodes in the season. So they're just really stretching things out, and I know a lot of people got really tired with that. So, this is not a good episode at all. Alright, so now let's get into my number 14 worst episode of Lost, and that is the hot girl on girl action that is left behind. Talk about an episode that is completely pointless, is completely filler. This is the 3rd season episode where Juliet and Kate get handcuffed. And they get trapped after like the others leave them because Locke blew up the submarine, blah blah blah, and the others split up and they leave the A-15 survivors behind. They leave Juliet behind, as we learn later on, as a spy, but they think that she's abandoned. And in fact, that revelation that she was purposely left behind to be a spy kind of invalidates this whole episode, because this whole episode, most of the main plot of this episode is about Juliet dealing with the fact that she was left behind, but we later learn that's all an act. So what's the fucking point? God. And then the flashbacks with Kate are horrendous, absolutely horrible, and they do that prequel thing where they try to set up something that's already been established but takes place later chronologically, so they'd be like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to set up perfectly for that, with Kate's mother saying, next time I see you, I'm going to scream for help. But that worsens it, because in the season 1 flashback, when Kate's mother does scream for help, she looks terrified. It's obviously because she's terrified for Kate, not because she promised her she was going to scream for help. And besides which, she was obviously like close to death, or she's in a very bad state. She's not in the right state of mind. She's out of her mind at the moment. So to say that she's just doing it because she told Kate last time, next time I see you, I'll scream for help, is utter nonsense. And it's a waste. I mean, I do like Kate and Cassidy meeting up, but most of the whole plot of them meeting up is Kate trying to see their mother and trying to con people for her Kate to see the mother, and that's just dumb. It was just so boring, a waste of time. And the island storyline, the only good part of it is we see the monster hit the sonic fence, but we don't need an entire episode just so we can have the monster hit the sonic fence. And as I alluded to earlier, they had Kate and Juliet mud wrestle, run around in the mud and attack each other. Ooh, look, it's hot women mud wrestling. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. What the hell? Lost, you're supposed to be better than this. And anyway... Okay, so next let's get into my number 13, which is Tricia Tanaka is dead. So, yeah, this is another complete and utter filler episode. Season 3, unfortunately, had a lot of these because, in fact, the producers even said that they purposely did this way because they wanted to force the studios to let them have an end date because the studio wasn't letting them have an end date and saying the show would just go on forever because it was so popular. So they were like, yeah, I'm going to act like little children. I'm just going to make a bunch of filler because we don't know what to do. We're going to have to stretch this out forever. So let's force the studio. And I'll talk about this more. This is a recurring theme in this thing. But anyway, this episode dealt with Hurley trying to get this Dharma van operational that he found in the jungle. This could have been a side plot of another episode where, you know, things actually happen. But instead they stretch it out over the course of the whole episode. I mean, I do like the interactions between Jen and Hurley in this episode, and Jen and Sawyer. That was kind of funny, them drinking beer to Skeletor. And I do like the ending of the episode where they reveal that Kate is getting Rousseau and Locke and Saeed are joining her to go out and look for Jack. But that's just one end of the episode. Like, all of this could have been transplanted into another episode. And the flashbacks were completely unnecessary. As much as interesting it is to touch back on and actually see Hurley's, like, cursed life. Although in later seasons they kind of brushed this aside and trying to pretend like he wasn't really cursed, which is utter nonsense. But the majority of it is just dealing with the daddy issues. And to be honest, I never really thought Hurley's father was that interesting. I think they just wanted to get Cheech on the show. I don't think he was ever really necessary or added anything to the story by having him on there. And oh, yeah, a main character with daddy issues. We haven't seen that before in Lost. And the whole thing with, like, them, you know, he pays a fake psychic to, you know, talk about curse, how she can lift a curse and all that. It's just a waste of time. This whole episode was... Those flashbacks were completely unnecessary. We didn't need them at all. The majority of this episode could have been cut, and you could have had this... The entire episode could have been one, like, 5-minute scene in a different episode. Just saying. Anyway, let me get now to my number 12, which is Hes Are You. Now, this is a season 5 episode. I think the worst in season 5. Because I was really looking forward to them going back to Dharma Initiative times in the 70s, because I knew before season 5 started that they would. And it would be so interesting to have all these huge revelations about the Dharma Initiative and their scientific experiments and the island. But they did none of that. Instead, they just hung out with a bunch of, like, just people hanging out in the suburbia neighborhood that they built and just being dorks. And here, this dealt with the plot of course, at the end, Saeed kills young Ben, which I thought I had so many issues with, because we knew they established time travel repeatedly over and over and over again in Lost, that you can't change the time. So the fact that by Saeed trying to kill young Ben, it ends up just making Ben the person he was, no shit! Knew it was going to happen. Therefore, I had zero interest in that. And the whole relationship with young Ben, I'm bringing you a sandwich. Like, I don't give a fuck. In fact, I don't think they should have had young Ben at all in the Dharma. We should have focused more on the science, more on the scientists, the experiments. What are the Dharma Initiative doing? But the show doesn't give a fuck. Instead, we get this BS with them taking Saeed out to this Holden, this interrogator. Ooh, this interrogator, and they keep building him up all episode. They even title the whole episode after him, this really scary interrogator. Better watch out, Saeed. This scary interrogator is gonna fuck you up. But what does he do? He gives him some LSD. ooh, not LSD. And then the Saeed like starts tripping and tells them the truth, and they all just like brush it off, and it has zero impact on the rest of the show. So what the fuck was the point of any of it? I'm sorry, I'm yelling already. Sorry about that, but I really don't like this episode. Anyway, let me get into my number 11, which is And Found. This is another complete filler episode. This is in season 2. I think episode 5, so still at the start. Alright, we'll get out of the way the one good scene in this episode. The one good scene in this episode is when Mr. Echo and Jen, like Mr. Echo and Jen are looking for Michael, and as they're running through the jungle, they hear the others coming, so they hide in the jungle, and you can see the others walk by wearing, like, carrying the teddy bear that will be implied later in the other 48 days. That was a creepy, effective scene. It was shot very well, effectively creepy, and building up the others to be this creepy force, which we later find is kind of flattens out. But anyway, really good scene. But the rest of the episode is complete waste of time. As I said, we don't need an entire episode to justify this. So the whole thing is about Michael, running out after Walt. And again, we get more Walt! And again, I understand that this would be forefront on his mind that he just suffered a trauma. But again, most of this should be seen off screen. We don't need to see this. It's repetitive as far as storytelling purposes go. And the whole thing with Jen and Mr. Echo chasing after him, it's a complete, like, sidebar. You totally don't need this. You could have cut this out entirely. Like I did my own fanfic version where I rewrote the season. I did cut this out entirely. It's not needed. And the flashbacks were worse, though. These are some of the worst, most useless flashbacks. And it's so frustrating, too, because it shows Sun and Jen before they met, and they keep almost meeting until finally at the end of the episode they do meet. It reminds me of this movie, I Saw Till There Was You, and I hated that movie because just have them fucking meet. It's so boring, and I mean, it does introduce the dude that she cheats with later on, but I don't think we needed a whole episode for that. The whole flashbacks were the biggest waste of time. And then we had the side plot with Sun lost her wedding ring. I lost my wedding ring. Oh, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? Anyway, let me now get into my number 10. So I'm now getting into my top 10 worst episodes of Lost. Let's get to my number 10, The Package, season 6 episode. God damn it. Now, if you're familiar with my channel at all, if you watch any of my reviews, you know how much I do not like season 6. Season 6 is by far the worst season of the show. I think there were very little good. There's like only basically one episode that was really good. Another one that was mediocre. But to come out of season 6, I think seasons 1 through 4 and the first half of 5 I think are amazing, even though there are some shitty episodes, which I'm talking about here. But for the most overall, those are all great seasons, or at least season 5 was half of a good season. Season 6 was just a bad season overall. And some people may ask me, like, why don't I have more season 6 episodes? Shouldn't this whole bottom 15 be filled with season 6 episodes? Which is a fair point. But the thing is that season 6 overall sucked. It's not like these other episodes I'm talking about are like, they had so much good episodes that they had to throw all their bad into one episode, whereas season 6, all the bad was spread out over the whole season, if that makes any sense. So there wasn't that many episodes I could really pinpoint and say, oh my god, that's horrible. It's just the whole thing was bad, but they just spread it out more. Now, there are, of course, a few exceptions to that, where they did concentrate their shit, and this is definitely one of them, where this is when I started to realize that the season was not going to get better, because this whole time I was watching it for the first 7 or 8 episodes, I was just like, oh, it's okay, you know, it's not that good, but it's just taking a while to get started. But when this episode came, it, this is when I first realized that the Flash Sideways were nonsense. Because when I first saw the Flash Sideways, I was excited about them. I was like, oh, this is going to be a great idea. But the thing about the Flash Sideways is I was excited because I wanted to see what people's lives would have been like if the plane never crashed. And we don't really get that because these aren't the same people in the main storyline. Because in this episode in particular, Sun and Jen aren't married. And I really was looking forward to seeing what this, because Sun and Jen, they kind of left it on a cliffhanger. The creepy guy in the airport being like, oh, you're not free, you never will be free, who can suddenly, the white dude who suddenly speaks Korean. That was one of my favorite scenes. I love that. And it was kind of setting up what would have happened if Jen actually didn't crash on the island. Would Mr. Pack gone after him? Would he have tried to run away? What would have happened? And so I thought the Flash Sideways would be a perfect way to explore that. But it doesn't. Because Sun and Jen aren't even... These are totally different people. They're not fucking married. And the whole reason Jen was bringing the watch to the people in LA was to has payment for Kimi to kill him. That's so dumb. I'm sorry, it's so dumb. And then they have Mikhail, and at the end, Jen shoots Mikhail in the eye, and they make a point to have a close up of Mikhail shot missing the eye. Get it? Because he wore an eye patch. Get it? He shot in the eye. Get it? Get it? Get it? Get it? I'm like, no, stop. No, that's so dumb. And the main island storyline was, again, just a bunch of filler. Oh, God, we get the whole storyline about Sun losing the ability to speak English. Oh, my God. That is so stupid. And then also, Widmore captures Jen because, of course, Sun's about to meet up with the group that Knotlock has. So they have to purposely keep Jen and Sun apart for the entire season, have them introduced, and then kill them off in the very next episode. That fucking seriously, that is the writers being like, we don't give a shit anymore, ha. That's basically what they're doing. Fuck you, audience, we don't care about you. Anyway, sorry. Let me get into my number 9, which is further instructions. Okay, so this is the second episode of Season 3, and everyone knows that Season 3 had a really rough start. I still do love Season 3 overall, especially the ending. I think it has the run of episodes at the end of the season is one of the best, if not arguably the best of the entire show. So some people throw the whole season under the bus. I totally disagree with that. But it did have a rough start. And again, this had to do with the writers sort of being like, oh, we're just going to write a bunch of filler because you won't give us an end date. Anyway, this is one of the worst. This episode is not only filler, it's silly. It's about Locke going to rescue Mr. Echoes from the polar bears, because suddenly polar bears are monsters that capture people. They're like trolls, I guess, now. I don't know. And the flashbacks were so boring, were so unnecessary. This is like the dictionary definition of filler, and there's several of them. I'll get to some later. Locke goes to this compound of this commune, and they sell weed, and he betrays, and there's an undercover cop. Who cares? God damn it. This was so ridiculously unnecessary. It's just hard to fathom. The one thing I will grant that I did kind of like was the vision Locke had with Boone, and the music in that sequence was really good. But then it ended with Boone saying, "Oh, you have to rescue Echo from the polar bears. They have him." And I was like, oh my God. That's so dumb. Anyway. Let me now get into my number 8, and I am going to get back to season 6. Sundown. Now, I have so many issues with this episode. It's ridiculous. Like, this episode is just filled with plot holes. Like, the entire thing barely. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like the writers kind of don't care anymore, and so they're just having things happen because they want to happen, and nothing makes any fucking sense in this episode. Now, when this episode first aired, I tried to convince myself it was good because I was still wanting to like season 6, and it did have a really effective creepy sequence after, like, the smoke monster, when they went around killing all the people at the temple. That was pretty creepy. And then at the end they had play the creepy kid music of Catch a Falling Stars faintly in the background. Has, like, Kate and all these people walk through a bunch of, like, corpses. Like, that was a creepy scene. But one good creepy scene does not a good episode make. The rest of the episode was just awful. So first of all, you gotta get into this whole Saeed being evil thing. This whole storyline was fucked this season. The whole thing was botched. It doesn't make any sense, especially since Saeed just decides not to be evil later on. They don't define anything, and the writers or people who defend this season will be like, oh, it's ambiguous writing. No, it's not ambiguous. It's vague, purposely vague, so the writers can do whatever they want with the plot, that whichever direction they want the plot to go. Stuff like this you need to define. This is what I talk about in fantasy. I talk about this a lot on my channel. It's the basic tenet of fantasy. The rules of when you're writing a fantasy is you can do whatever you want. You can violate the natural laws of gravity or natural laws of nature as long as you define what the rules are in your fictional world and you stick to the rules. Now, I talk about this a lot with other shows like Game of Thrones that don't stick to the rules. But as far as Lost goes, it's not that they don't stick to the rules. It's that they don't define the rules. Therefore, they can just do whatever the fuck they want and just make shit up. But that is bad writing, my friend. That is not what you do. And so the whole thing about Saeed being evil was never really defined, so it doesn't really make any sense. And how Saeed goes to Dogan says, oh, you have to stab the man in black, don't let him speak. And then he does speak. So is that what caused it so Saeed couldn't kill him? Or was Saeed... But then Dogan says that he was just lying, that he just wanted Saeed... he just wanted the man in black to kill Saeed. But if he knows that Saeed is evil and the man in black is evil and the man in black has corrupted Saeed, why would he think the man in black would kill Saeed? Because of course the man in black wouldn't kill him. He would try to corrupt him and join him on his side, which is exactly what he did. So why did Dogon send Saeed out to kill the man in black if he wanted to kill Saeed? Why not just fucking kill Saeed? I know they try to give some lame excuse about, oh, my son, whatever, that's why I won't kill him, but it doesn't fly. And plus they tried to have Jack give him this poison pill earlier. Why not just fucking kill him? And if Dogon doesn't have the stomach to kill himself, he gets his goons. Hey, goons. He had a whole bunch of goons there. Goons, come here. Kill, shoot this guy. Boom, boom, dead. Done. Instead, he sends Saeed out so that the man in black can corrupt him and use him to kill everyone at the temple. What? It makes no sense. And then the worst and most egregious part is at the end of the episode, when Dogon's just sitting there telling his loving story about his kid next to this person he knows is evil, and then, of course, the evil person kills him. And of course he does. Of course he kills him. And he just basically sits there and lets it happen. He leaves himself wide open, no guards around, not even at the ready. He's supposed to be this great warrior, great fighter, and he just lets himself be killed by Saeed, which, by the way, Saeed drowns him in this magical water that turned him evil, life-bringing water, brought him back to life and turned him evil. So therefore, how come Dogon didn't come back to life and become evil? Just saying. And then the interpreter comes in, and instead of he sees Saeed just killed Dogon, and instead of being like, goons, come here, shoot this guy, he just killed our master. No, he's like, what are you doing? And just comes up again with his arm raised, not defensive at all, leaving himself wide open for an attack. Oh, you idiot, how dare you? And then Saeed slits his throat because of course he does. Why are these people suddenly idiots? Why are they suddenly letting themselves be killed? And especially since, again, this is undefined rules in fantasy, because all of a sudden they just said in this episode that Dogon was the only thing keeping the smoke monster out of the temple, which they never even hinted at. They did not establish this at all. They just made it up for the episode because they just want to do whatever the fuck they want. And considering that, especially, why did Dogon just let himself be killed like that if he knew he was the only one protecting everyone there? This episode's horrible. And I didn't even get into the Flash Sideways yet, which was just, again, I don't know who these characters are. It's just like Saeed's not even in love with Nadia. Well, he kind of is, but Nadia is now married to his brother. And of course, the reason why they do this is because they want to set Saeed up to go to the afterlife with Shannon, the person he knew for like 5 days or something. It's all a bunch of nonsense. Anyway, I am going to stick with season 6 because, as I said, this is a horrible season. And I'm going to get to my number 7, which is Everybody Loves Hugo. I don't. Not in this episode. So this episode, I said before that the package, I started to realize that the season was not going to get good. And this episode is when I fully accepted that. I was like, no, they're really fucking this season up. There's no redeeming. There's no coming back. Because basically, I mean, I never liked the Flash Sideways, obviously. I did at first, but then the more, as I said, the more different, the more I don't care about it. And this is when they get the plot of Desmond going around trying to reconnect everyone, being Mr. Love, the love connection guy, who's trying to get everyone together. And they left a lot of mysteries with Libby when she died. Like, why was she in the hospital? What was the deal with her? And so they're bringing Libby back in season 6, and they're not going to touch on any of this shit at all. Instead, basically, like, all the characters who appear in the Flash Sideways in season 6 is basically, oh, you get to see these characters again. Why? Okay, so what's the good of seeing them again? Nostalgia. That's it. It's like, ooh, you remember Libby? Here she is. And the whole point of her in this episode is that she was in love with Hugo and talking about their love connection. They went on one date. Like, they were just flirting most of the time. And now all of a sudden they're fucking soulmates. And Mr. Desmond's going around and being like, I'm going to connect all these soulmates back together. And this is so cheesy. It's melodrama. It's ridiculous. And the island storyline, I cannot get over the fact how they introduced this really interesting character in season 5, Alana, who's crowded in mystery. They hinted at a greater backstory by showing her covered in bandages in Russia, and they never followed up on this. And they implied that she was Jacob's daughter. In fact, I learned later that they originally intended her to be Jacob's daughter. But instead, they had this interesting character. What did they do? They give her the fucking Arch treatment. Arch, who was a moron, who killed himself by mishandling dynamite when he was supposed to be the expert, they have Alana just casually toss the dynamite aside and blow herself up. Oh my god. To me, that was the writers again going, fuck you! Fuck you! You know that interesting character you wanted to see something different with? Do was, something really interesting with, and we hinted at? She's dead! Fuck you! Fuck you! And it's also the writer saying, I don't know. I don't feel like writing. Do I have to come up with something interesting for this character? I'm too lazy. Let's just kill her off by having her drop dynamite. I don't know. That's basically what it is. And then the whole thing, Michael appearing to Hurley, and everyone hates Michael. They're all perfectly okay with Saeed being a child killer and torturing a bunch of people, but Michael killed 2 people in a desperate attempt to regain his son from evil kidnappers. So fuck him. But Saeed's all good, and then Ben's all good, and fucking Kimi gets to go to the afterlife, but Michael's too evil because he was blackmailed into rescuing his son. Yeah, what? No, fuck that. It's stupid. And then the whole thing with they reveal what the whispers are, where Hurley's like, oh, I know what these things are. There's actually the dead. See, this is my proof that the Lindelof and the other writers who kept saying, oh, everyone who wants answers just wants some guy to come out and read off all the answers. No, bullshit. Because when you do that, like you did in this episode with the whispers, it's not satisfying. That's not what people wanted. People wanted you to resolve storylines. That's how storytelling works. In any normal show, if you introduce a storyline, you resolve it later on. It's a very simple concept. It's not about someone coming out and reading a bunch of answers. It's about you integrating the storyline and giving an interesting resolution to it, which you've done so well in the first 3 seasons, but now all of a sudden season 6 you're just lazy and tired and give up. Anyway. Alright, cool. So let's get down to it. My 1 rated episodes, the worst of the worst. My top 6, the absolute worst that this great show had to offer. So let's start with my number 6, which is whatever the case may be. Now this, I've said this before and I'll say it again. This, if you looked up the dictionary definition of filler, it should show this episode or reference this episode. This whole episode was a complete waste of time, especially coming off of the heels of Claire getting kidnapped and the revelation that Ethan wasn't on the plane. They've been infiltrated by natives on the plane. Are they going to address this in any way, shape, or form? No. Instead, we're going to get this complete waste of time of an episode where Kate is trying to get a briefcase open from Sawyer, and they're taunting him, oh, you can't get the case open, oh, what's in the case? And it turns out to be a bunch of guns. Whoop-de-whoop-whoop. Why do we need an entire fucking episode for that? They could have done, again, it's something they could have done in like 3 minutes. Oh, we found the case, there's guns in it. There you go. That's all you need. You don't have to have this complete waste of time. Oh, we have to get the guns from Sawyer. Oh, let's try to get Sawyer to give us a gun. He won't give us a gun. And Kate's gonna blah, blah, blah. And she tries to, do the sleight of hand with Jack and pretend that it's not, because she doesn't want him to see what's in the case. And it's a toy plane. She doesn't care about the guns. She just wants the toy plane. Why? Well, we later learn in the season that it's because it belonged to this guy, her childhood friend, who she was in love with and got killed. Which I do understand why that would have sentimental value for her, and how this is guilt eating her up that is never touched on again in any later seasons. But that she'd be willing to lie and trick Jack and doesn't want him to know that there's a toy plane there. A much smarter way to play this up would have been like, hey Jack, open this case for me, there's guns. And he'd be like, oh, guns? So he'd get the guns. And what's in the envelope? It's just a toy plane. Oh, well, I don't care about that. I'll just have the guns, thanks. And then Kate goes off and she has her toy plane. But no, instead of doing that, she had to do this whole thing of trying to trick him, trying to do sleight of hand, trying to get the thing from Sawyer, trying to do all this bullshit for something that's never referenced again in the future. Anyway, after the season, at least in the flashbacks, not only are they a waste of time, they kind of contradict Kate's character, because this is before they revealed what Kate's actual crime was, which was killing her stepfather, who was abusive towards her mother, who actually was her actual father. Which is weird. So, but that doesn't, just because she's on the run as futures doesn't automatically make her a master manipulator bank robber, which she is. And she robs the bank just so she can get this toy plane, which once she has, it's completely forgotten about. This whole episode's an utter waste of time. Anyway, let me get into my number 5, which is Hearts and Minds, another Season 1 episode, this one focusing on the characters of Boone and Shannon. And I can say Was certainly after watching season 1 again. Boone and Shannon were definitely the low point of season 1. This is definitely like they were just throwing out ideas. Oh, wouldn't it be cool to have this rich couple who can't really deal with being on the island, but they're not really a couple. They're brother and sister, and they're constantly complaining and yapping at each other, and they quickly realized that that's not working. So then they made Boone Locke's lackey instead, and then they realized that doesn't really make any sense either, so then they just kill him off, and then they realized that Shannon doesn't really make any sense either, so it was the start of season 2, they kill her off. So they were a huge mistake of season 1, and this episode focuses on them. And a ridiculous, again, complete filler plot where Locke, who had just helped Charlie get over his addiction with drugs, and was like, helped him deal with not taking drugs. He gives Boone drugs, and makes Boone hallucinate, and we get the sequence of Smoke Monster killing Shannon, but it's not really. It's just all a dream and a complete and utter waste of time. And the flashbacks are even worse because Boone and Shannon have sex. Isn't that risque? And of course, at the start of the episode, they had to, make it very clear, and they had the cop. Boone goes to this cop, and the cop's like, "So you're not actual brother and sister?" And he's like, "No, my mother married her father, and we're stepbrother and sister. So no blood relation whatsoever." Yes, and they have to make this very, 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 very clear, so they can have them, make out at the end of the episode. Whereas Game of Thrones will not give a shit about stuff like that. But not that I wanted them to do that. It's just I didn't want them to do it at all. They don't need to, it's because we have to have these two characters have this sexual background. No, just keep it as it is. And as a matter of fact, just get rid of these characters because they're not interesting. They're not good. Having an entire episode with a stupid dream sequence and irrelevant, risque flashbacks is a complete and utter waste of time. So, now we get into my number 4. Getting back to good old season 6, The Last Recruit. So, yeah, I keep saying this, like, Everybody Loves Hugo was the episode that came before this, and that's when I resigned myself the season wasn't going to get any better. This episode is when I, absolutely accepted that. Is when it was confirmed, it was reaffirmed to me that, yeah, this season sucks a lot. And I would say this is the worst episode of season 6, because nothing happens in it. It shows how useless the Flash Sideways are, and it's when I realized that nothing good was coming out of the Flash Sideways either. It's just Desmond doing his love thing, like he hits Locke and then beats the shit out of Ben, and none of these characters are the characters we actually know anyway, because they're living totally different lives, so why do I care? Answer is I don't. And don't worry that we killed Alana, this awesome character, because you get to see her in this 2-minute scene as a lawyer in The Flash Sideways, who's a totally different character. Doesn't that make that all better? Huh? No, it fucking doesn't. And Island's storyline was just people moving from place to place. And I say this a lot about the season 6 storyline as a whole, that if you look at the Island storyline as a whole, it's basically just people suffering from one place to another for no rhyme or reason. I think this is the worst. This is where that exemplifies that. It's the worst example because now Jack and Kate and all them are with not Locke. Why? But they originally said, we're going to go there to talk to negotiate, but now all of a sudden they're part of this camp. And then Claire says, you are with him now because you let him speak to you. And this is getting back to the bullshit with, if you let him speak, then it's too late, which they keep having as a repeated motif, but they never explain it. It never makes any fucking sense, which is bullshit. If you're going to do something like that, you need to make it make sense. It needs to have some significance. You can't just say shit because it sounds cool and expect it to work. No, it actually has to work for the plot. There actually has to be reason behind it. There's no reason or rhyme to why these characters. And then, of course, Jack and Sawyer hatch a plot to escape. Because of course they fucking do. Because why are they with Notlock in the first place? They never explain any of this shit. So they're just going over there, and they're going over there, and Notlock's going over there, and these people go there, and you're with him, and we're with them, and you're with them. Oh, I'm with you now. Who gives a fuck? And then they get to Hydra Island, and Whitmore pulls guns on them. Why does he fucking do this? We learn later that Whitmore's whole plan is to keep the candidates safe. He wants to protect them from the Man in Black so they can take over the island. So what's the best way to protect them? Point guns at them and fucking imprison them. Put them in cages. What the... And... Yeah, we get Sun and Jen reuniting. Finally, after 13 episodes, and then they die in the next episode. What the fuck? This is shit. It's a horrible episode. So, yeah, I think this, more than any, exemplifies all my issues with Season 6, which, as I said, overall, very bad season. Anyway, let me get to my number 3. Getting into top 3 now. Worst of the worst. And these 3 episodes, I do think, are the absolute worst of the show overall. I think these exemplify some of the worst episodes I've ever seen anywhere ever. And surprisingly, as I said, Last Recruit was the worst episode of Season 6 in my opinion. So surprisingly, none of these are in Season 6. But they're still very terrible episodes. So let's start with my number 3, The Other Woman. Season 4 overall was a really good season. I think the main issue with Season 4 is that it didn't really work to answering questions. It just posed more questions, which caused a bunch of issues later on down the line. Now, and it's when they sort of abandoned a lot of the loose plot threads of the first 2 seasons. So, but it's still a really good season. But this is a huge blemish on that season, because it's not just that this episode's filler, it's just that it actively doesn't make any sense. And like, they're just doing weird shit to do weird shit. Why is Faraday and Charlotte going to this gas place? They say this because they want to destroy the island, so Kate and Jack go to stop them, but then they find out that they actually say that Ben wants to kill everyone on the island, and they're there to stop Ben from releasing the gas. Why would Ben want to release the gas and kill everyone on the island, which, by the way, would include himself, although he uses magical powers to stop that. But I guess it's implied this is the same method that the others used to kill the Dharma Initiative. Fine, but it makes absolutely no sense why Ben would try to release it now. Let's say, for example, even if Ben had a way to keep himself and the others safe, and it would just kill Jack and everyone else. Why does he want to kill Jack and everyone else? Like, Kimi isn't even fucking there on the island yet. He wouldn't even kill Kimi, who's clearly the biggest threat to the island. Charlotte and Faraday aren't. So why would he want to do this? What's going on? Nothing in this fucking episode makes any goddamn sense. And then, like, it plays up this huge romance between Jack and Juliet, which could completely drop after this episode, which, to be fair, I think it was a smart move. But it still makes this episode suck for bringing this up. I think the writers, after writing this episode, saw how horrible it was and like, yeah, let's not do that. Which, again, smart move, but it still doesn't change the fact that this episode sucks. And then the flashbacks, complete waste of time. Instead of giving us any meaningful information on the others, they just retread shit with Juliet. And again, they do the prequel-itis, realize, oh, actually, Juliet was having an affair with Goodwin, who's married, and Ben has an obsession with Juliet, and that's why Ben had Goodwin go out to the tail section, because Ben knew he would get killed. Bullshit. I call 100% bullshit on that. You don't need that. It just makes things worse, not better. And the whole thing with Ben saying, "You're mine," to Juliet is, again, retconning it, bullshit. It's making it a hell of a lot worse. It's not needed. It's never touched on again. So, yeah, this episode is just a pure disaster. Anyway, let me get into an episode that's even worse, which is my number 2, which For a lot of people, they're number one, and I can certainly understand that. This is a close number two, very close. So I don't begrudge anyone for putting this at number one, and that is Fire and Water, season 2 episode with Charlie acting like a dunce, acting like an idiot. This is when they had like these weird fever dreams, which usually they use to tell something about the island, something that has to do with stories going on. But here, it's driving Charlie to baptize Aaron, which, of course, never makes any difference. It doesn't make any difference whatsoever, and it basically just drives Charlie to kidnap Aaron in the middle of the night and have everyone be against him. And Locke is totally not in character in this episode. He's a total asshole. He's a total dickhead. Not saying that what Charlie did was justifiable, but the way he responded to Charlie was absolutely horrendous. And the way that everyone in the camp just abandoned Charlie. This is someone who's obviously in need. He's suffering. He's in need of help, and everyone's just treating him like shit. And Locke beats the shit out of him, and he's completely out of character. Not of course what Charlie did by setting the fire was wrong, but even before that, like the way they're treating him, it's just, and the whole episode's a disaster. And the flashbacks are like, I mean, they're maybe somewhat interesting, but they're ultimately boring. Like, it does kind of make sense that how Charlie started taking heroin and how that started ruining his life, and how his brother was ruining his life, but it's ultimately not needed. It's mostly just filler, completely unnecessary, and an utter waste of time. Now, the reason why this isn't my number one is because there are some side plots in it. Like, I think, like with Hurley and Libby getting together, and Sawyer teasing Hurley is like, "Oh, your time's now, Hoss," and he calls out, "Hey, Libby!" and he sees Hurley there going, like, that's funny. And the stuff with Jack and Ana Lucia, like, becoming more friendly, I like that as well. So it had some nice character building stuff here and there in between the utter hot garbage. But the other hot garbage is really bad, though. Really, really bad. So I don't begrudge anyone for putting this as number one. It is a really bad episode. Anyway, let me get to my number one, which, to be fair, a lot of people would also say that this is the worst episode of Lost, and I, of course, agree with them. I think it's very clearly the worst case of what I was talking about earlier about season 3, about the writers just purposely spinning their wheels and purposely putting out a bunch of meaningless filler. This, by far, is the worst example of that. And I am, of course, talking about my number one worst episode of Lost, which is Stranger in a Strange Land. Now, there are all these mysteries that were introduced early in the show, and there are a lot of things that, audience and fans were waiting to be touched on and explained and integrated into the story somehow and get some resolution on. But instead, they answer the question that absolutely zero, I can say with 100% confidence that total amount of 0% of the viewership wanted this answered. What's the deal with Jack's tattoos? Majority of people didn't even notice Jack had tattoos, honestly, and those who did probably didn't really care. I was like, oh, isn't that so weird that a doctor has all these tattoos? Not really, actually. I've met a lot of doctors, people that profession has. So tattoos is actually quite common. But no, we have to fixate on his fucking tattoos and have an entire episode that, again, makes zero sense. They introduce all this weird shit. Jack practically sexually assaults this woman in Thailand. I mean, not really sexually, but he forces her to give him a tattoo against her will, where she obviously is something that is very culturally sensitive and has an outsider. She doesn't feel it's appropriate for him to get one. So he practically attacks her and forces her to do this against his will. And the very next day, her brother appears and he thinks everything's fine and dandy. He's actually surprised when her brother and his friends beat the shit out of him, which, of fucking course they do. Now, I don't play this off as a blemish on Jack's character. I play this off for very, very horrible writing, because the writers obviously didn't intend for it to come off this way. They didn't intend to have the sexual assault overtones that scene does. They intended it to be all weird and mysterious and, ooh, why are they attacking him? What's the deal with these magical tattoos? And we find out when she does reveal what she sees in Jack, is that he's a leader, and being a leader this angers him. This makes him sad. Let me think about this for a second. No shit! This is something that's completely obvious. I mean, that is such a one beat. You have a character who's one beat, has one characteristic, and let's reveal to someone who can see into his soul and reveal something really shocking about him. And she reveals the one beat that we're already extremely well aware of. What the hell were the writers even thinking on this one? And don't get me started on the island storyline with, Carl whining about, oh, I want to go back to, and Sawyer like punching him, being like, I want a man up cowboy. I'm like, who cares? I don't like how he's a shitty character. Never should have him in the first place. The whole thing's a waste of time. And then you have the whole plot on Hydra Island with Juliet, like wanting to execute Juliet for doing what Ben fucking told her to do. What the fuck sense does that make? And they put her on trial, and of course Jack goes for her, and so they have to give her this mark. Oh no, don't give her the mark, and it's never brought up or mentioned ever again. And they have this one character who's like the sheriff type who only appears in this one episode, who the writers tell us died sometime off screen, which they never fucking explain, and she's a complete waste of time, and try to tie it back in the tattoos. The reason why I'm still 100% deadpan that this is the worst episode of Lost, because not only is it unnecessary, not only is it filler, not only is it ridiculous, but I think it's the worst sin that Lost is capable of, because of having a show that's really ambiguous and mysterious, which to the most part they use to its advantage, as I'll get to in my favorite episodes. But its worst sin is being pretentious. I think that's the worst thing Lindelof and his creations like Lost and Leftovers can do. And I think this is the worst example of being overly pretentious, of being like, ooh, isn't this all mysterious and all weird, and it actually serves no purpose. It's just there to be, oh, I'm weird. And it's pretentious. It's garbage. Waste of time, completely poorly written, and in a way that the writers didn't intend. You get a lot of side effects, and it's just terrible. So I would say this is worse than Fire and Water, in my opinion. This is the worst episode of Lost. Anyway, that is it for my top 15 worst episodes of Lost. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will be back soon, very soon. I'm behind in all my videos, so I'm going to try to get all of these out as quickly as I can. So I'll be back soon with my top 30 best episodes of Lost. So all this negativity, if you didn't like it and it kind of bothered you, this is such a great show, why don't you talk about the positives? I certainly will. I want to come back and I talk about my top 30 best episodes of Lost, so be sure to check that out. Also check out my channel as I cover many other shows like Star Trek, The Expanse, Mr. Robot, and more, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all that. And thanks a lot for watching.